Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
All right, and welcome back into another edition of the Vegas Squares. I am sitting here in a damp, cold, dark studio because no Spike, no Tonys. I am all by myself, but I'm not all by myself because I have my good buddy Nate Wahl on the phone joining me this week. Super excited to talk some XFL football. Nate, what's up, buddy?
It's good to finally have 1 week of the XFL under our belt, and yeah. I was impressed with it.
I know, most definitely. I gotta say, after 1 week of the XFL, and I don't think I'm alone in saying this, I think the XFL did a pretty good job of capturing our hearts. And I'm hoping that it's not like a repeat of 20 years ago where we had one good week under our belts and then things just kind of fell apart.
Yeah, that was kind of the way, I remember watching it even as I'm dating myself, but an 8-year-old, one of the last games, I just remember it just being an absolute shit show. And I'm like, why is this actually on TV?
Yeah, most definitely. So, all right, let's thank the sponsors here. First and foremost, obviously, 12-Ounce Sports Radio, where we air every week. You can catch us. You can catch us there at 12ozsportsradio.com. Also, promo code SeatGiant, promo code 12-Ounce Sports, where you can get your discounted sporting event, concert, and theater tickets. You can catch our website, vegassquares.com, obviously our Twitter handle, at vegassquares, and you can catch Nate at his Twitter handle, at thebrickwall87. That wall is WAHL. All right, 1 week in the books. First thing that stood out to you, Mr. Wahl, was...
I was really impressed with P.J. Walker out of the Houston Rough Riders. Just one of those things to, see him beat out Connor Cook for the job and, play exceptional out of his mind so well that he got the Wildcats defense coordinator fired. That just was very much a surprise. And, I think the XFL is going to be all about surprises. So, P.J. Walker was my biggest surprise in week 1.
Yeah, I have to say, you're right. With P.J. Walker beating out Connor Cook and then to do what they did to the L.A. Wildcats, 37-17, enough to get, you're right, the defensive coordinator, Pepper Johnson, fired in 1 week. The first week in XFL incarnation is awesome. I don't know if this is going to be a trend of coaches, being ultimately on the hot seat week to week. I would imagine that's not the case, but it really, you're right, because I watched a little bit of that game, and, to summarize, I would say it really looked like the LA Wildcat defense had just met each other like 3 hours before the game. It was, P.J. Walker just torched that defense, and no disrespect to P.J. Walker, you would think that a defense who had been together allegedly for a few months now would have put up a little bit of better fight. So I'm excited. Never excited to see somebody lose their job, but I'm excited to see that there's going to be accountability even week 1 here in the XFL.
Yeah, and I think people are going to week 1. I think there's more to what we saw on TV. Obviously, there's teams all the time that lose at the score of 37-17, and they don't lose their jobs the next week. But Winston Moss, head coach of the Wildcats, he's always kind of been an outrageous coach. He had a few news conferences with the Packers that I remember where I'm like, "What are you saying, man?" Like, he's just very impulsive. So they also cut team captain Anthony Johnson with Pepper getting fired. So I want to think that there's something that we're not seeing that is going on in that Wildcats locker room that, might be raise some eyebrows anyway.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the things I noticed, and I don't know if, obviously, it's hard to make a, broad assumption. One of the things I noticed, obviously, with the way the clock runs, we didn't see a ton of running. Obviously, we saw a lot of passing highlighted by the quarterbacks, and that was kind of what the XFL intended to do in the beginning by having all of these name brand quarterbacks. We didn't see a ton of running. Is that something that's just a blip in the radar, or are we going to be looking at something of what people would call like an air it out arena kind of a style of play here in the XFL?
I noticed that too. I think I was looking at the numbers here, and there was not one running back that rushed for over 100 yards rushing, which kind of weird. That kind of happens in the NFL all the time. So kind of see that the numbers when you really look at them. That I think passing is kind of what people pay attention to, but in the same regard, there are some good running backs in the league. So I think it's just a trial run. Everyone wants to see the pass, but I like to say that the running game is going to get a little bit stronger week by week because just as far as like preparation of the defenses and everything. So I think it's just a 1 week thing. I think week by week we'll start to see the running numbers get higher and get better. So
yeah, most definitely. Especially the running production really almost came from quarterbacks. Ta'amu ran for 77 yards. Cardale Jones 28. Philip Walker, P.J. Walker, you're saying 24 yards. B.J. Daniels for Seattle came in with Quentin Flowers also playing for Tampa Bay. He rushed for 34 yards. So it looks like the rushing may, in certain spots, have to come from these quarterbacks. I mean, you look at, like I said, like I just named off all those quarterbacks. Those guys in college or either in the pros were more of that dual threat style. So that may be the MO that the XFL might take here in this spot where, we may not be able to actually, line up I formation and run it down your throats and kill clock because there's not a ton of clock to kill. So our rushing offense may have to come, the Lamar Jackson style where you don't know run or pass and you got to defend for both. I think it's an interesting little wrinkle in the XFL for me. The under for me, I was fortunate enough to bet the under on 3 of the games. I went 2-1. The under for me hit so far. My assumption is that offense usually trails defense a little bit in football, but after all that we just talked about with the quarterbacks rushing offense, I'm not seeing an underplay really at an advantageous spot here in week 2. The books have corrected themselves. And what do you think about just so far gambling? We talked about your picks last week. Gambling-wise, I think a lot of Twitter was all over the degeneracy that is sports betting. So how did you kind of see that in your first week of watching the XFL?
Yeah, I think definitely the books were just kind of, shooting a number. I mean, obviously they've done their research, but they're just kind of shooting a number week 1 because, it's a startup league, How are you going to know how accurate your numbers are?
Sure.
I think week 2, just to kind of see, the numbers are going to trail off a little bit because obviously, once you get that first run in the books, you kind of know, okay, we're not going to see we're not going to see like a 55 or a 60 or, you're going to get a lot of scoring, but you're not. It just kind of depends. Obviously we saw the Battle Hawks seem to be more of a defensive team as long with the Renegades. It's just they're going to see the numbers kind of fluctuate, and I think it's not just going to be a point here, a point there. It's going to be 10, 12, 15 points that you're going to see the numbers. I think more likely go down versus up. So
yeah, most definitely. So for week 2, we've already looking at the totals here. Guardians Defenders is at 49. Vipers and Dragons is at 48. Renegades Wildcats 48. And the Battlehawks and Roughnecks is still up in the 50s at 51. So you've already seen a slight tick. I'm curious to see. I don't have any actual action notes here of where the money is and where the action is, but I'm curious to see how many people are going to come in on the under in the second week, and then now we'll see how it goes with week 2. Offenses are a little bit more in sync, and as the season goes on, these numbers could be a little bit more closer, a la NFL sports betting. I don't know how big of a sports bettor you are, Nate, in the NFL, but those numbers are pretty dead on, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a little bit, and it's a point here, point there, whereas, try a new league, I mean, they know a little bit more than we do, but, I wouldn't say not by much.
Yeah, most definitely. I myself have seemed to adopt the Vipers just because I am from the Tampa Bay area. Aaron Murray, I would say, he was after me in terms of high school. He played at one of the rival high schools. So it's hard to root for him while subsequently rooting against him because of his past and playing him in a rival high school. But he did not look great. I mean, it was a promising start for the Vipers in terms of hype. They definitely were given, they weren't the favorite, but they were pretty close to one of the betting favorites. They came out and laid a stinker against the Guardians last week. We'll start with that game. We'll recap all the games of the first week here. But what did you see in that game? 23-3, the Guardians won. They just seemed to control that clock. And also, there's been talks now that I already lost his name. Not BJ Daniels. Who's the backup? It's BJ Daniels, right? Correct?
Yeah, it is BJ Daniels.
Yeah, BJ Daniels. Also from Tampa, out of USF, I believe one of the all-time leading rushers for a quarterback in USF history. There's talk that he could get a little bit more of a look, especially if Aaron Murray struggles against the Dragons. But the Vipers' first week against the Guardians, as a betting favorite, came in and laid a complete egg.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as everyone was so high on Murray, if I were to say there's one huge letdown in the AAF and the XFL so far, it's been Aaron Murray. I mean, I don't know if he's doing a little too much college football talk year round. That's not getting his game all in focus. But I mean, I know, especially in the AAF draft last year, he's drafted very, very high, and just to kind of see him kind of flake out. He was such a stud in college. But yet has kind of never really had success, in the NFL, the AAF, or the XFL. I wouldn't be surprised that BJ Daniels gets more reps because as we're kind of seeing the quarterbacks in the XFL is, it's a lot of dual threat, and I feel like Aaron Murray is more of your stereotypical, pocket passer. And I think that's not translating well to the AAF. I mean, excuse me, the XFL. I guess the AF too. But I think it was just surprising to see, just the Vipers just look defeated and to be such favorites and to lose so substantially. It was surprising to me.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think you kind of hit it on the head. He's been a little bit underwhelming. At Georgia, he was, he and A.J. Green teamed up to really not do much in terms of college football prominence. You're right, nothing really happened in Kansas City, also the AAF, so it's been a kind of a mediocre run for Aaron Murray. Let's talk about the DC Defender game versus the Seattle Dragons. DC looked good, Cardale Jones looked fine. Seattle, they're talking about as potentially one of the worst teams in this XFL group of 8. Do you agree with that? And I would look at this game. DC seemed in control the whole time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a scoreboard kind of gave it a little bit of that possibly the Dragons had a chance early, but kind of in the end it was kind of more based on the defenders. I think Cardale Jones has a really good chance to be at the end of this the XFL MVP. I don't think that's a shot in the dark by any means. He definitely, kind of showed his stuff. That was my favorite game to watch because the announcer went on to the field after talking to Dylan Day, and Dylan Day had a few choice words that they had to cut the cord on because
they're on broadcast TV.
Right, they're not on HBO. So, but yeah, I mean, the crowd in DC just looked like they were actually enjoying themselves, even though they were, playing in a soccer stadium. But, defenders, in a way, I think definitely, or I think they might be a team to kind of, I would say my sleeper pick, to possibly be top in the XFL, because they're not really a team that, I look at some of these head coaches and I'm like, okay, Bob Stoops, a lot of these guys have been, but like Pep Hamilton's not really a guy that, I think of when I think of like top 3, 4 XFL coaches, but he might be kind of, I would say, a diamond in the rough towards the end of the year.
Right, most definitely. A bright spot in that game for Seattle, Austin Proehl, son of the great wide receiver Ricky Proehl. I don't know if he might be predating your age.
I know he was with the Rams, right?
Yes.
When they won Super Bowl.
Made one of the more beautiful catches I've ever seen in the NFC Championship against the Bucs about, 21 years ago. He had 5 for 88 and 2 touchdown receptions. One of the things I thought I'd see more of, maybe it was just the way that Cardell played. He did fine, 235 passing yards, 62 completion percentage, 2 touchdowns. I thought we'd see more of Tyree Jackson, this big Lamar Jackson-bodied type guy. I'm kind of interested in seeing him, the guy out of Buffalo. Thought he'd do something as a pro. Obviously, I meant an NFL pro, but didn't see too much of him. Kind of was hoping to see more of him in the spot.
Yeah, I think he might be a guy that I think Cardell is definitely the guy in DC. I mean, if, for example, you're talking Aaron Murray, you could see some movement as far as, I don't know how like trades or anything work in, but I don't know if the scouts not paying attention, coaches not paying attention. I watched Tyree Jackson's film at Buffalo. He fits every category you want in your quarterback. He's big, he can run around, he's versatile. I mean, it's tough to see him kind of a key quarterback number 2 role. And I think hopefully later this season he'll get a shot somewhere, but the question is where.
Yeah, and that's a good question considering that the XFL owns all 8 teams. You could honestly, maybe if you're Oliver Luck or his group around him, make an argument to say, hey, look, if Aaron Murray is not performing, BJ Daniels may or may not, we'll see what happens, in week 2, 3, or 4. But, you could sit here honestly and say, hey, look, I'm going to take Tyree Jackson, put him on the Vipers, see what I can come up with. I know that that's, not necessarily fair to the player, and, we can have conversations about player movement and player livelihood and all those things. But, with a situation here with the fact that the XFL owns all the teams, I think that would make for an interesting concept to say, hey, look, maybe the fans want to see Tyree Jackson on the field, and he's not going to get on the field in D.C. because Cardell Jones is playing so well. Maybe we put him in Seattle. Maybe we put him in Tampa. Maybe we put him in L.A. That would be an interesting concept. I don't think one that will come to fruition, but if I'm Oliver Luck, I've either already thought about it or I would consider thinking about it myself.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, not having to go through 8 ownership groups and seeing, okay, what do you think of this? What do you think of training this guy? You have to do like 0 to no analysis. It's literally, I'm Oliver Luck. I'm like, hey, Tyree Jackson, you're going to Tampa Bay or you're going to wherever. It's not really a situation where you have to go through a bunch of, BS that you have to usually go through with a trade or acquiring a new free agent or anything like that.
Right, most definitely. And, I mean, with all due respect to players, I obviously know that they are human, but, in this spot, you are signing a contract to play. Obviously, secretly, you're obviously trying to get into the league at this point. This league is, whether or not they'll admit it, is still, quote, unquote, a developmental league for the NFL. I would imagine these guys are trying to get into the NFL at this point until the XFL brands itself well enough to be able to pay players a little better. So I would be on board for something like that. And like I said, maybe Oliver Luck's already considered this, or maybe it's something that they haven't even looked at yet. Or it may be something that each season they may look at. Aaron Murray, BJ Daniels, it didn't work. Let's see what Tyree Jackson can do. Let's ship him over to Tampa and let him run the offense. So it could be an interesting wrinkle, especially if it happens, mid-season, like a proposed. Houston did take care of the Wildcats 37-13. This was the only game that went over the total, which I had the under on as well. But P.J. Walker, is he going by P.J. Walker anymore, or is it just Philip Walker?
I think it's just P.J. Walker from what I'm hearing.
All right, fair enough. Well, I remember him as P.J. Walker. So 272, 4 touchdowns and a pick, 23 of 38 on 61% completions. It looked like they had it in control. Again, we talked about Pepper Johnson getting fired based on what happened in this game. This one obviously seemed like the biggest blowout of the weekend.
Yeah, and I think with it too, Wildcats also had Josh Johnson was hurt, so they had to go to an Ivy League quarterback by the name of Charles Knopf, who, I thought was relatively underwhelming. He showed some sparks where I was kind of like, okay, maybe the kid could sling it a little bit, but I think in the end it was kind of, Houston kind of ran the table on them, and it just was hard to find any star power from the Wildcats. Really, it was tough. It was a really tough game to watch. I didn't watch all of that game, but I did also think that game was, very much so, a lopsided game that any average fan that's like, I'm going to watch my first XFL game, that probably wouldn't have been the one I would be watching, because you'd be snoozing probably midway through the third quarter based on the scoreline. So,
most definitely. Bright spot, Spruce, 11 for 103 for the Wildcats, 11 catches, 103 yards. Moving on to the Battlehawks and Renegades, which obviously was the biggest upset of the weekend. Landry Jones not playing, of course, but the St. Louis Battlehawks 15-9. Everybody has the Dallas Renegades pegged as the best team, at least going into the XFL season. The odds makers have subsequently changed that. Do we have any information on what happened to Landry Jones?
I do not know. As far as from what Bob Stoops was saying, is he was ready. It was just a situation they didn't want to push him, too early and with his injury. But he stated to go back next week. I think it was just a stinger of some sort that was just enough to put him out and start Philip Nelson.
Well, that's good, because if you're still impressed with the odds, or excuse me, you're still impressed with the Dallas Renegades, the odds actually will give you better. I think they've moved down to 6-1. So if you're still interested in the Renegades to win the XFL championship, you can get better value now at the books. Jordan Ta'amu, I think I might call him that all season, Ole Miss product, 20 of 27, 74% completion, 209 yards and a touchdown. Looked good enough to win. Obviously, I think Dallas is going to be a better team. The defense on Dallas looked really good, being able to shut down St. Louis for the most part. This game was a very AAF-style underwhelming game. You didn't have your starting quarterback on Dallas, and it seemed like I was watching this while I was in the poker room down on the Strip. I was at Caesars playing poker, and I was keeping tabs on it, but it looked... didn't watch it intently, but it looked like a very, very boring, anti-Big 12 football type game.
It reminded me a lot of when I used to watch the Birmingham Iron in the AAF, when you get scores between them and Memphis, like 12-9 or something like that. That's exactly the vibe, I would say. Or it just wasn't a game that, Tamu, I'm going to say Tamu, Tamu really looked good, but if you watched the game and you heard his stats, you'd be like 15-9. The guy played really well, but it was just something where Philip Nelson, maybe he made the transition from an Instagram model back to a football player a little too quickly, because he just looked very erratic throws. Maybe he just got caught up in the spotlight. Maybe it's he's a football player from Minnesota, and there's not a lot of great football players out here. But I think he also transferred 3 times. I don't know. It must be National Rip on Philip Nelson Day, but anyway, I thought Dallas, like you said, defense was really stout, but it was just a situation with the Battlehawks. They just had enough gas in the tank to just get through. So, I think if this game's played again with Landry Jones, definitely a different outcome. I think you're looking at a touchdown or two more for the Renegades. So, that's kind of where I'm at with that one.
Fair enough. All right, so we've got 1 week in the books. Someone who would be an objective bystander watching the football, they say, okay, I am interested. You've got me. I'm hooked. I've got football in a time that there's not football. From the Nate Wahl suggestion box here, what XFL team should that person adopt?
I think the best energy I saw was in D.C. I think, as far as if you want top players that, I think can get the job done, if you want an atmosphere, if you want to go to a game and, just bring a random thing of cheese and, slam beers all day, I think as far as atmosphere, I would be a D.C. Defenders fan if I was coming off the street. Just based on what I saw, I think they're going to be exciting. I think they're kind of up and coming, even though, Cardell Jones is a good quarterback. That would probably be my pick.
Okay.
If I want like an good underdog story, I would probably go with the Battlehawks, just because they have a lot of guys that you're like, okay, I know this name. He's not great, or he wasn't great, but they have a lot of solid players that aren't necessarily big. I would say big names that stand out on paper on a stat sheet, but they're maybe a little biased, but I would consider Battlehawks my favorite team in the XFL, just based on the way they played last week.
Right on. All right, let's move over into the gambling side before we get into Nate's Week 2 picks here. Bookmakers around town, I've been listening to the radio, been talking to some of them. Week 1 of the XFL, handling-wise, overall was a success. The attendance was good for all 4 games. Obviously, we love the difference from the NFL to the XFL in both exposure and obviously competitive play. Darren Ravel, Action Network, obviously we all know who he is. It said that basically the XFL did 18 times the handle as the first weekend of the American Alliance, or Alliance of American Football, the AAF, as reported by both DraftKings and FanDuel. And just the Saturday first 2 games did roughly 40 times the handle of the first 2 AAF games. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it just goes to show, the networks that the XFL partnered with are networks that everybody and their brother has on their cable package. I think that really has something to do with it. Not everybody carried CBS Sports Network and, also Bleacher Report Live. I think that has something to do with it, but I also think, people that are in their, 40s, 50s, they remember the XFL from 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of like, they remember it. So, I think you got that generation that tuned in. You got, just your football lovers in general that, the AAF was good football, but I think the product on the field was what I was most impressed with in the XFL. It just seemed better. I think, I'd love to see attendance get up to be higher. They're averaging about 17,000 for just about each game. So, that's good.
Yeah, for the first week of the XFL season, I would call that a smashing success.
Yeah. I think, I guess I would expect more out of like Houston or Dallas, just because Texas is kind of what I call the football hub of America. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I think the XFL should be proud of what they put up as far as ratings, and also as far as attendance.
Yeah, most definitely. I think in my personal experience, I think the teams that end up playing the Sunday games are probably going to have a little bit of an uptick of fan interaction as far as the attendance numbers. I could be wrong in that spot, but I'm curious to see if someone does break it down here on the internet over the course of the season, if more people are showing up. Is it based on day that their game is? Is it based on region? Because you're right. I mean, LA, especially if this team's bad, no one's going to care. Seattle will be an interesting concept because they do support their team through tough times, and by team I mean the Seahawks. I don't think a team in this XFL, as far as interaction with their city or their fan base, however far that reaches, I don't think a team can too afford to be too bad. And by bad, I mean I'm talking like the situation we had with LA, getting their doors blown in 37-17. If the league wants to maintain a relevancy in all 8 destinations, I don't think any team can afford to be Cincinnati Bengals type bad.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, especially with the Wildcats, I mean, LA, you have a million options as far as sports. You have a million options as far as everything else, as far as what you want to do. So, if they're not putting butts in those seats and they're not winning, you kind of get a vibe that, they could easily bring in next year, if there is a next year. I don't think Oliver Luck is afraid to make moves. So, if LA stinks it up this year, they might go move LA to, I don't know,
maybe
somewhere else.
Maybe they'll come
Las
to Vegas.
There you go. I think it's just a matter of, I just remember because, my AAF experience when I was in Memphis, I went to Memphis, sat in the box and whatnot, but, it just was it was not the vibe. And you could tell, if I was the GM of the AAF, I would have canned Memphis halfway through the season. 1, because football wasn't good. 2, Memphis is not a city that I think really strives off football. I think it's more of a basketball city, but kind of going off topic, but I think they need to kind of be really smart with, I think Seattle, like you said, very loyal city. But, I could definitely see an LA or Tampa Bay as well, kind of, if the team starts to stink it up, trickle downwards and, who knows what may happen.
Yeah, you got so many options in Tampa, too. You got the beach, you got a good hockey team. There's a lot of things to do, the theme parks. You're right. Some of these cities that are the larger metropolitan areas, you're already kind of a new product, and sometimes people are reluctant to adapt to change. So you're right. I think no team, especially some of those big markets like New York, Tampa Bay, LA, etc., can really afford to be super terrible. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe Oliver Luck and the XFL work out some kind of plan that all the teams remain competitive. So I'll be interested to see how that comes down the line. Did you get into the fantasy aspects of the XFL?
I did not. No, that's my plan for this week, is to dive into it a little more.
Yeah, I think that's for me as well. I think we'll probably get looking into that, and maybe we'll have a little bit of an update on our next show next week. So, all right, Nate, it's time to make your Week 2 picks. Are you ready?
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We've got 4 lines, all within a touchdown. So, obviously, you can see that the spreads have tightened up, and we've got the totals have come down a little bit as well. We will start first. New York Guardians versus the DC Defenders. The line is DC minus 5.5. Total 49.
So with this one, I was really high on the Guardians, and I stayed high on the Guardians. DC is a good team, but I like the Guardians at plus 5.5. And then this one, I think I do like the under on this, even though 48, numbers did go down. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle than people are going to expect. So I'm going to go with the under.
All right. It's got the Guardians and the under in the DC-New York battle. Tampa Bay versus Seattle. Tampa Bay is on the road again. They are a favorite on the road again. They are a 2-point road favorite. Total 48.
See, I like Seattle with this one, just based on I like them at the plus 3. I think the Dragons, these two teams I think are probably you're going to be looking at the bottom of the division here soon. But I think Seattle, just based on what I saw, Brandon Silvers is a all right quarterback. I think he has the tools to get it done, but I don't know, the Vipers, there's too many unknowns at quarterback. There's just too many, they were very underwhelming last week. So I got Seattle plus 3. And this one I'm going to take the over just based on both these teams have stunk it up on defense. So both will probably allow a lot of points and go over 45. So I'm taking the over.
Most definitely. And I have lost my page. Where did I go? I've already lost the page. There it is. All right, we're back. Dallas versus LA. We were talking about this game. LA, this is their home game here. Dallas is a 2.5-point road favorite. Total 48.
Well, I like Dallas at the minus 2.5. I think that's actually really low because I have it on one page at 4, so it must be trailing downwards. But Dallas just seems like they have a total package on offense and defense. They all are also getting Landry Jones back this week, so I just want to see how the Wildcats deal with the adversity of a new defensive coordinator. Their team captain was cut last week. If I may hammer this pick bet, this one would still be the one I go with because I'm shocked that the Dallas is kind of trending, the numbers trending lower for Dallas to cover. I would definitely shoot the Renegades at minus 2.5. And then as far as the number, I think this one's going to be really close. I'm going to go with the under, but it's not going to be by much.
Fair enough. All right, and St. Louis versus Houston. Currently, I see Houston as a 6.5-point favorite. I've seen it scoot all the way up to 8.
Yep, that's where I'm seeing is 8.
All right, let's play it at 8. Houston as an 8-point favorite, total 51.
I think with this one, Houston is kind of the team that's rolling right now. They're playing another back-to-back home games. I like the Battlehawks. But at 8, it's just Houston just looked dominant against LA. So I'm going to take the minus 8. And as far as the total, I think we're going to get the total. I think I'm going to go the over on that, just based on Houston. Obviously, we saw knows how to put up points. I think we'll see a little bit more firepower out of the Battlehawks offense. So I'm going to take the over 50.
Right on, and there we got Nate Wahl's, I guess it's Nate Wahl's big picks of the week. I probably should preface it with that.
Yeah, Big Wahl's big picks of the XFL week.
There we go, XFL picks by Nate. You can follow him on Twitter at TheBrickWall87, WAHL. All right, give us one thing as we wrap it up here that we should be looking out for in the XFL Week 2. What's one thing you're interested in seeing?
I'm just interested in seeing, like we kind of talked about, how LA, I just want to see how, I'm kind of repeating myself here, but how that team kind of overcomes this adversity of, you're under a new defensive coordinator, you have a new team captain, how are you rebounding from that? You have a great way to put kind of fans in their place or doubters in their place to, say that they're not going to get it done, after week 1. This would be the week to kind of put the nail in the coffin and see if they're an elite XFL team. I also am really curious with the quarterback situation for the Vipers. I think Aaron Murray may this week play his last game in the XFL. Might be a bold take, but I just think BJ Daniels offers just so much more. As far as, this to me, a quarterback play is it's a dual threat league. Not going to see many Phillip Rivers. You're not going to see many, for example, Aaron Murray's. So, I mean, I think Aaron Murray loses his job this week, and the Vipers move on to B.J. Daniels.
There you go. Hot take. Aaron Murray will play his last game in the XFL. Big Walls, big take of the week.
There we go.
Let's wrap it up here. Thank the sponsors, 12-Ounce Sports Radio and Seat Giant. Promo code 12-Ounce Sports for your discounted sporting events, concert, and theater tickets. Obviously, want to thank Nate for coming on, and I'm excited. I'm enjoying this XFL talk. I'm excited for the upcoming XFL weekend. We got to get you out here for the NFL draft. We got to try to make that happen in April. So
sounds good.
So all right,
let me know what we can do.
All right, we'll set that up, and then we'll have you in the studio. Nate Wahl's big picks of the week in Vegas. Have you been to Vegas?
I haven't. I need to make it happen.
All right, we can make it happen, Captain. All right, well, we appreciate everybody tuning in. We will catch you next week. Follow us on Twitter at Vegas Squares. And you can catch our website, vegassquares.com, for all of our podcasts. Listen to us, obviously, on 12-Ounce Sports Radio if you're not doing so already. And give those guys a shout. Tell them we sent you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you on the next one. We are out. Good luck with your bets.